touch regulation. That's what enabled them to get away with it.
I was the first person to move from self-regulation to statutory regulation with the creation of the Financial Services Authority. So don't tell me I didn't believe in statutory regulation. I created the Financial Services Authority against the wishes of most people in the city. And what had happened beforehand was you had self-regulation. We made it statutory. Now, if the Financial Services Authority had not look, basically, you've got global banks. They're entangled with each other. They work with each other. So an individual national regulator cannot do it on its own. You've got to work with other authorities. You've got to have a global financial supervisory system. And Jeremy, I don't think you're understanding the real world if you think this could be done in one country. It can only be done by regulatory systems that cooperate around the world.
But in June 2007, less than 3 months before Northern Rock went belly up, you were talking in a speech about a golden age for the City of London.
It had been a golden age, and the problem...
You said we were at the beginning of a new golden age.
It had been a golden age, and it should be a golden age, but what happened, Jeremy, is that we had global financial supervision failing, and it's global financial supervision that's got to be sorted out.
So somebody else's fault.
Jeremy, this is absolutely ridiculous, because you know perfectly well that this was a global financial crisis. You know it started in America. It started with the banks in America and the subprime mortgage market. It started with these guys selling to Europe half the subprime mortgages, and it started with the regulators in America giving, if you like, a AAA rating to products that were actually worthless. Now, I take all my share of responsibility. I'm quite happy to do so. And you're trying, I know what the way this interview is going for you. You want to make me responsible for everything that happened. I'm trying to say...
You couldn't possibly have predicted something, but of course you would have done. But you did believe in light touch regulation. The accusation is you sold your soul to the bankers.
I did not. Look, the conversation that I've had with the bankers, please believe me, I have never been soft on bankers, and I'm not soft on bankers now. And I've been very, very clear about what the banks have got to do in the future. And if we want to talk about this election campaign and not about 1997, let's talk about what we're going to do to sort out the banks and why I'm the person to do it. Look,
these guys have done permanent damage to our economy.
They've done damage to our economy, but it can be sorted out. Because look, we're going to have this crisis of globalisation at some point. Because globalisation is itself...
You should have seen it coming.
Is itself disruptive. Because, yes. And I
should have seen it coming.
And I said from 1998 onwards, Jeremy, look at all my speeches. You cannot do this without a global system of regulation. Quote my Harvard speech in 1998. I said, right, you don't have that, do you?
No, I don't.
Because go right through the speeches that I've been making.
So you knew this was going to happen.
I tried to persuade America, I tried to persuade Europe, I tried to persuade the rest of the world to enter into a system of global financial supervision, and I could not persuade them. And that's the problem. We set up what's called the Global Financial Stability Forum. We set it up, but it was not, if you like, an early warning system. Look at my speeches. I said, create an early warning system for the world, and you'll be able to see what's potentially going to go wrong. And I failed. I did not manage to persuade other countries. But don't tell me that I wasn't proposing these changes from 1998 onwards after I saw what was happening in the Asian crisis.
Your speeches constantly refer to the fact that you had eradicated boom and bust.
What I was referring to there was what I talked about at the beginning.
The domestic economy, we'd ended boom and bust.
Yeah, but
bust is precisely what we got, isn't it?
But what I was referring to there, Jeremy, as I explained at the beginning of the conversation, was inflation. Look, inflation was our biggest problem for 50 years. How many interviews did you do in the 1980s and 1990s when it was about inflation, interest rates getting out of control? We had got inflation down. Inflation is still low. Interest rates are low, but we dealt with a power cut in the international banking system, a global financial crisis that could only be dealt with in the long run by there being global financial supervision. And you, for one, who writes about all these things, should know that if you've got a global problem, you can't solve it with just a local solution. You need to have a global financial solution. And if you want to do your research on my speeches, go back to 1998 onwards, when I'm saying set up a global financial stability forum, give it the power to be an early warning system for the world, get regulation and supervision sorted out, and I was unable to persuade other countries that this was essential. And I don't think there's anybody in the international community who doesn't know that I was the person pressing for these international reforms.
The biggest problem we've got now is this enormous deficit of £160-odd billion. You say we can't cut spending now, but we have looked at various of your speeches. There's one you make in 1997 at the Labour conference.
Back to 1997.
Absolutely. Well, you were Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Absolutely. I'm very happy to debate what I said, but you cannot just give a partial view of what I said in 1997.
Well, this is a key...
You didn't seem to know what I was saying about the global financial system to be honest, Jeremy. You made statements about what I'd said about the financial system, not taking into account what I'd said about the global system.
Well, and then you said that no one had listened to you.
I said that I could not. I persuaded people to set up a global financial stability forum, but I couldn't persuade people to set up what you said we should have had, which is an early warning system for the world.
I didn't say there was you should have had an early warning system.
You should have seen it coming.
Why you hadn't seen it coming.
You said.
You've explained why you hadn't seen it coming.
I said I tried to create an early warning system for the world, and I failed.
All right, let's go back.
I couldn't persuade other people.
Let's go back to the deficit. You say we can't cut spending now. But in your early days as Chancellor, you said, I tell you, we've learned from past mistakes. You cannot spend your way out of recession or spend your way through a recovery. That is precisely the reverse of what you believe now.
When you have an inflation problem in the economy, that you cannot do it. But we don't have an inflation problem in the economy. Look, this is more similar to the 1930s than it is to the 1980s and 1990s. Jeremy, just let me finish about what I'm saying about this. There was an inflation problem in our economy that had to be dealt with, and that gradually inflation came down. What we have now is a global financial crisis, which meant that economic activity in the economy has been, if you like, cut short. We've got to restore economic activity in the economy because the private sector won't invest. This is not an inflationary problem. You don't need to, if you like, stop investing because there's inflation and because interest rates are too high. What we've got to do is stimulate the economy, and there's nobody left to stimulate the economy. If private investment won't do it, if the banks are not able to do it, you need the government to do it. It's a problem similar to the 1930s, not the 1980s or 1990s.
And
I'm afraid I've got to correct you on that.
There are going to have to be cuts of some kind, whoever wins the election.
Not this year. There should not be cuts this year. Please be absolutely sure about this. If we cut this year, as the Conservatives plan to do, we will push the economy back into recession. The reason is that if you cut when you don't have private investment to take its place, and you don't have any other, but not this year. This is one of the big issues of this election, they say.
But transparency is everything.
You cannot cut this year without making the possibilities of our recovery, putting that at risk. And every other country recognises that you should not put it at risk this year. 2010 is the wrong year to make cuts in public spending.
But at some point there will have to be cuts. Whoever wins the next election.
We've announced our plans for that, and it's a deficit reduction plan for 4 years.
Can you tell us which government departments are going to be cut and by how much?
The 3 departments that are exempted from cuts.
That wasn't what I asked.
Well, the other ones are liable to be cut.
So every department,
not necessarily every department,
apart from the 3, could face cuts.
Other departments
by how much?
Could face cuts. Well, we've announced it, and I hope you've seen the figures. We've said the public sector pay and public sector pensions will take 4 billion. Efficiency savings will be 11 billion. That's the restructuring of government that's going to take place. And we've already announced, for example, legal aid and other areas of government where we'll be cutting expenditure.
The transport budget for next year?
The transport budget for this year, you're talking about 2010-11?
I'm talking about the year starting in 11 months' time.
We're going to be moving from road to rails, so you will not see the same levels of expenditure on roads.
Right, so we're going to cut the transport budget, or you would cut the transport budget. What about the housing budget? Are you going to cut that too?
I think housing is essentially a private sector activity. Let's be honest about this. Housing is essentially a private sector activity. We've renovated about 2 million houses over the period of the last 13 years. I don't see the need for us to continue with such big renovation programs. And if you take all our capital investment, Jeremy, let me just finish because I'll answer most of your questions. If you take our capital investment, we've built hospitals, we've built schools, we've built roads, we've built infrastructure. You don't need to do that a second time. You don't need to do that next year if you built a hospital last year. And that's why there is scope for us reducing public expenditure on capital investment projects without actually affecting the basic health service and the basic schools and the basic policing. So you don't need to build your hospital and your schools twice.
You will also need to put up some taxes, won't you?
We've announced that as well. We've announced it.
And national insurance you've announced.
Yeah, we've announced.
What other taxes will you put up?
We've made it absolutely clear, 19 billion. And it's the national insurance, it's the top rate of tax above 150,000, and it's pension tax reliefs above 100,000 for people who are on the higher rate. And most, if I may say so, of the extra taxes are going to be paid by those on the highest earners. But the national insurance tax is necessary to pay for the health service and for schools and for policing. And look, my principle here is, yes, we have to make deficit reduction.
VAT? Will you put up VAT?
No, we're not, because it's not in our deficit reduction plan. We've got a deficit reduction plan.
Is that a no? You won't put up VAT?
It is a no, because it's not in our deficit reduction plan.
Will not be raising VAT.
It's the Tory tax. They did it in 1980. They did it in 1990.